Well, my name is Chris Shaw. My dad and I and a couple of other members started this organization. We called it the Columbus Songwriting Workshop. Now we've rebranded during the pandemic and became a official 501c3 called Move Your Music Forward. The idea is to empower musicians to take their craft to the next level, and then bring those musicians into service work. That it's kind of a two-part mission. So some of our events that we do are workshops for specifically like working musicians, and then the other part is to do work in underserved communities. So we've been doing songwriting with senior citizens, and we just finished up another class doing that. And so we've started to record those songs, and then um, they're basically just for them. They wrote the lyrics in combination with us, and we played music to it, and it's a really fulfilling thing. And so we're trying to get kind of a symbiosis between the music community and different communities like that, and kind of sharing the craft of music with everybody. Today we are really focused on music community with our Road Ready series. This is tangible tips from the road from musicians that are from Ohio and beyond. So Blaine is from Findlay, Ohio originally. He picked up the guitar at age 10, and he, well, I guess I want to kind of give it to you, Blaine. Thanks for joining us. And can you kind of give us a little bit of how your music was growing up and all that?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, by the way. This is a really cool thing. I love the fact that you guys are reaching out to musicians and giving them the resources that they need. I feel like a lot of people have goals in music but end up getting kind of stuck because they don't know how to approach the industry, and it's a very frustrating industry, and a lot of people just kind of give up. So yeah, this is really cool of you. Yeah, as you were saying, my name is Blaine Dillinger. I'm from the little town of Findlay, Ohio. I went to the Ohio State University, majored in jazz guitar performance, and now I live in sunny San Diego and spend most of my time touring with a Hawaiian pop reggae artist named Hyrie.
So you spent some time in Findlay. You moved to Columbus. You got a degree in jazz. You started playing in bands around Ohio, and then kind of take us from there a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I started playing around 10, and I was god awful. So I spent, but I loved it. So I spent a lot of time playing guitar, and I grew up in this kind of the grunge era, if you will, the early '90s, listening to like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all these Seattle-based bands, which was awesome for me because it 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 was showing me basically that you didn't have to be the best um, to be a musician. You just had to be unique and have something to say and something to share, which I always really kind of resonated with. But yeah, I started playing around bands in my hometown, playing a bunch of local shows. Trying to get the random people at the bars to appreciate the weird music that we were playing. It was always that, why don't you play some covers or something like that. We Early on, that was kind of actually one of my first lessons was that you kind of have to play to your audience, if you will. You can't really go into a place where people expect one thing and then do another thing. You need to basically play for your audience, and that was kind of a hard lesson to learn. But luckily, I kind of learned it early. But yeah, I moved down to Columbus, started at OSU, and actually, your guys' band was like one of the first bands that was giving my bands at the time a chance to open and play in Columbus in the scene, and it was really cool.
It's crazy. What band was that? Was that because I remember you were playing like M5 Mix 20, and you were playing with Jacob too, Freely, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was I think it was And 5 Makes 20. Those first And 5 Makes 20 shows. It was like a weird jammy funk rock band, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
yeah,
sorry to
the
interrupt, but this is
yeah.
hilarious. I just saw this last night. I don't know if you could get in on this, Ben. It's a flyer from a show with Andy Shaw Band and Five Makes 20.
Nice.
Anyway,
Nice.
kind of weird.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, and yeah, you guys took a chance on a band. I think I was still living in Findlay, Ohio at the time. A couple of my bandmates had moved down to Columbus, but I hadn't even made that jump yet. And playing like is Ruby Tuesday still there?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
So my question would be, music has a lot of adversity, getting up, dusting yourself off, that's like part of the game. Was there a turning point for you that you can look back on now that was like a big change you made to kind of open things up for you?
Yeah, yeah. For me, around that time, the band I was playing with, And 5 Makes 20, actually kind of got absorbed into another act. You mentioned Jacob Freely.
Right.
They were an acoustic duo who was gaining a lot of regional popularity, and they didn't have a band. And I believe it was my bass player and drummer. We played some show with them, and 5 Makes 20 did, and they got along really well. And then eventually my bass player started playing a few gigs with them, and then I started playing a few gigs with them, and then the drummer showed up, and eventually Jacob Freely just kind of absorbed and 5 Makes 20.
Yeah.
And the band was regionally successful. I think we had a couple sold out shows headlining at the Newport. Actually, that's funny. I think one of our shows, the opener for the sold out Newport show was 21 Pilots.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, right. They were our openers. Um,
Wow.
if that tells you how old I am. And, yeah, so like the band had regional success, but like a lot of bands, they broke up. And I answered this Craigslist ad for this guy who was doing like a hip hop with huge reggae influence, and he was like, "I just need someone to help me produce some tunes." I mentioned the work that I did with And 5 Makes 20 or with Jacob Freely, and he hit me back and he's like, "Man, all my friends loved Jacob Freely. You probably the perfect person to collab with." So I started collabing with him, and that project was called Shrub, which gained a lot of success as well in
Forgot about that.
in Ohio and regionally. And then and this is kind of a reoccurring theme. You never know who's gonna watch your show, and you never know what's gonna come out of it. So just because like a band or a project kind of fails or becomes stagnated, I guess, stagnant, yeah, it doesn't mean that you should give up on putting your best foot forward, your best performance, your best whatever. I know it's daunting to play for, uh, empty rooms and to be, constantly frustrated financially. But the Jacob Freely gig, even though it was sad to be over, it kind of opened up this idea, or opened up this opportunity to play for Shrub. And so we created some music. We had some regional success as well. But then I ended up moving to California, and I went back to Craigslist, found an ad for a band that was looking for a guitarist, and this time they were pretty firmly in the reggae genre, whereas Shrub was more like a hip hop reggae hybrid.
Right.
And I answered the ad and be like, "Hey, I just moved here. I'd be down to play guitar. I played for this band Shrub in Ohio." And they hit me back and said, "Oh, we've heard of Shrub. We really like that album they put out." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that was me. I produced it and I played guitar on it." And they're like, "Sweet." So I got an audition and got hired into this band called Clear Conscience, and I was living in San Francisco at the time. So we started playing some festivals. One of the festivals was called the Cali Roots Festival, which has since grown into this massive reggae festival. But when we were playing, it was pretty small. And that was what, 2013, I want to say. And so we played these shows. I played on uh, an album or two with them, and they had this producer Ian Young based out of Southern California, and I started following all of his projects that he's worked with on social media. Fast forward a year and a half, Clear Conscience is pretty stagnant as far as they were pretty comfortable with the shows that they were playing, whereas I wanted to actually play nationally, do more touring. I want to say early 2014, happened to see a Facebook post from one of the bands that this producer Ian Young was producing, and they were like, oh, we need a sub guitarist for 2 months for a bunch of shows. We're based out in San Diego. I sent an audition video. Their trombonist slash multi-instrumentalist Andrew McKee was like, oh, when I played with Ian Young, I played a couple shows with this guy. He's got a really good stage presence. He's really talented. We should give him a shot. So then I drove down to San Diego, did an in-person audition, played a couple months worth of shows with Hyrie, and I've been kind of playing ever since. It's the longest temp gig in history, I think.
That's awesome. We talked last time a little bit about just touring in general and kind of getting to touring if they don't know what touring is. If you can speak on that level of like, I'm a musician, I want to start touring. Like, what's the first step? Is it going to the next city that's bigger and just checking out what they're doing there? Is it hopping on another band's tour?
Yeah. So touring is, everyone's kind of got a slightly different idea of what touring is, but most people think it's these um massive affairs. It can be as simple as doing like a week or two of shows in your region, I guess. When Hyrie was just getting started, we had a opportunity to go out and do some tours with some much bigger bands in the scene. So their first tour, I believe, was with a band called Tribal Seeds, who Ian Young was producing and a part of, I think, in that era. My first tour with them was with a band called Stick Figure, and they were just starting to tour at the time. I think this was 2014, like the fall of 2014. That was like a 3-month cross country kind of ordeal. In the meantime, between the tours, we would do these kind of mini tours around California and the surrounding states, Nevada, Arizona, out to New Mexico sometimes. And what we were doing between the tours with these little kind of mini tours is we were trying to build up numbers in a set of markets. And I was talking to, actually, I think I was talking to you about this in our last little
Yeah,
Zoom chat.
a little bit. Mhm.
And what we were trying to do is every band kind of needs fans. If you want to make a living playing music, you have to find a group of people who like your music and who are willing to spend money on tickets and physical copies and merch and all the things. It's the business side of the music business, right? What happens is everyone kind of assumes that, like, oh, I just need one person to hear my amazing song and give me that opportunity and hoist me up.
Right.
Right. But in reality, I mean, that can happen, and it has happened. And to those people who hit that route, hell yeah, good for you. um, but a lot of times it's more of you're out there trying to build your fan base. And so we worked really hard on securing these markets and in these venues, playing with other bands that have somewhat of a draw. And so it kind of goes back to that thing I learned in Findlay, Ohio. Like, you want to play for people who might like your music.
They're ready for you.
Yeah, they don't have to already know who you are, but they just have to be fans of the general type of music and live show that you're putting on. With Hyrie, the goal was to play these markets full of people who might like our thing, build those numbers, and then once you have numbers, once you're playing like 10 to 15 markets, 10 to 15 cities, and you're able to pull a couple hundred people in each city for a show, that's when people in the industry
Mhm.
are going to be like, oh, there's an opportunity to make money here.
Right.
Um, a lot of people assume that it's just on the merits of how good you play. Well, a lot of bands play amazing music. I was in plenty of bands that played really cool music that was quirky and fun, and a lot of talented players. But unless someone is seeing dollar signs, then it doesn't matter as much, if that makes sense, as far as like trying to get these people on board to help you. So once we had these markets kind of built up in our home area, that's when a booking agent from Monterey came down to a couple of our shows and saw the people that we were bringing in, and saw that we were having consistent numbers in these markets, and then signed us to, at the time it was Monterey International Booking, and then they got bought out by Paradigm, and then the pandemic hit and Paradigm split, and now the people who were laid off for Paradigm started another booking agency called Mint. This is the business side, but yeah,
Mhm.
we stayed with the same agent through those shifts, but now we're Mint Talent Agency is our booking agency.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it came from taking these tour opportunities, which paid little to nothing as well, to gain up even more markets. So when we would do the national runs, we would never do them headlining, because I could go probably book a tour of DIY venues and small bar gigs across the whole country, but it's not gonna do me any good if no one knows
That you're like
who
coming
I am. Yeah, or that I'm coming,
machine
or
behind it,
anything. What's up?
with like the machine behind it a little bit, like advertising, promo, all that.
Yeah, and even if you are promoting and advertising and stuff, if you're going out by yourself, you're gonna have a rough go at it. There's a lot less people nowadays who go out just to hear new original music.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was kind of viable because you could set some stuff up. People who normally frequent a venue would be like, "Oh yeah, I'll check this band out. They seem fun. This is a cool flyer or whatever."
Mhm.
But nowadays, doesn't happen as much. So if you're not bringing your own people to these venues, you're going to be playing in front of, the bartender. And I've had plenty of gigs like that with other bands who are like, let's book a tour. And we book a tour and we advertise away, but no one really cares because no one's really heard us. In my opinion, touring just a tour like that is kind of a waste of resources.
Mhm.
So in Hyrie's case, we stuck to these markets that were primed and ready for us, normally going out first with a band that already had a draw and then playing for their fans. Same thing with the nationally touring. We would go out with these bands that already had a draw and they were already had these venues, they already had everything. And we would go out and basically play for their fans.
Mhm.
And at that point, you play in front of 500 people who might like your music. You put on a really good show. Obviously, you have to put on a good show. You have to be, your music has to be down first. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, you can suck, and then you have to have that. But out of those 500 people, say 50 people enjoy your tunes, become a fan, they love your show, right? So now you have a market in these cities around the US, and you have 50 people here, 50 people there, and it starts to be more viable that when you come out to play your own show, someone's going to show up. So
Right.
we did this for several years, opening um, for other bands, and every band that we toured with kind of opened the door for a bigger band to be like, oh, well, they toured with this band, we should bring them on as well, and they're able to draw, some people in each of these markets. Um, and then if you keep doing that and you don't run out of money, you can eventually go through and book your own headlining tour um, in these farther away markets, and you have people who are going to show up, and it becomes starts to become financially viable to do that. So our strategy now is kind of pivoted from only opening to doing one, maybe two opening tours a year. Still trying to get in front of new people who would be receptive, but then doing 1 to 2 headlining tours a year to go back to basically the same markets that we were going these other bands. So like we'll normally do like a big summer tour and then basically repeat that route or close to it in the fall and the spring. This year we're kind of dividing it up. So we did like the East Coast and the Midwest in the fall, and we're doing the West Coast in coming up here actually, and then we'll probably hit a summer tour with somebody else. And as we're playing more and more, we're trying to open up for bands that are on different niches of the core scene of fans, rather than playing for the same, bands. Because if you keep opening for the same bands, you're gonna keep playing to the same people,
Right.
and those who are gonna like you are gonna like you, and those who are not so much gonna like you are not so much gonna like you. If you play for them again, there's a little wiggle room in there, and there's new fans that come in, but it almost becomes like a coast at that point. You're kind of coasting, and the opening slot is not really affording you as much growth as the first couple of times that you had toured with the band.
Our band's in the reggae genre too, so it's very interesting. I think just because it's genre, I mean, it's kind of the same thing in my mind that happens with country music, where it's like the reason why so many people go country is because it's a genre and people know what they're getting when they get into it, and you can market it and commodify that. And the reggae thing, I think, is very, I would call it. I mean, do people call it the Cali reggae scene? I mean, that's kind of what they call it, right?
Yeah, yeah, Cali reggae
Like, it's
scene,
like a
which
genre.
yeah, yeah, and it encompasses or reggae rock is a term they used a lot as well. And then
So it's, you were talking about kind of growing out of that scene, but also still being a part of that.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, people in the scene. Uh, the other element I didn't necessarily talk about of gaining fans is festivals.
Right.
Festivals are a great opportunity to not only play for the broadened reggae fan base or the broadened scene fan base for that genre, but they're also an opportunity to kind of network and interface with other bands, and they're an opportunity for different promoters and music industry people to see your live show and to see um your crowd size when you're playing and like all of those different things. So festivals are another great way to kind of gain that fan base of people who are already excited for your genre, and to continue that. And once you get to the point that we are, the festivals can actually be pretty financially lucrative as well. And it gives us a chance to kind of interface with the general reggae fan base in different markets without having to necessarily go on an entire tour to reach those people again, if that makes
Are you
sense.
talking genre-based festivals or just like general music festivals?
Um, well, genre-based festivals is what I was kind of referring to.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But playing those festivals also tend to open up the opportunities to play um, other festivals outside of the genre. And it's pretty crazy, honestly. I remember playing like the Cali Roots Fest in 2018, and I was on the stage where Hendrix famously burnt his guitar on stage, and you can still see the outline. And we're
Wow.
playing for like 25, 30,000 people, something like that. And then a few weeks later, we fly to Alabama Gulf Shores to play the Hangout Fest, which is a multi-genre festival with like who was headlining that one? Cardi B, I think, was the headliner when we were there. And I mean, the Lumineers were there, and like all these huge, non-genre specific bands from different areas were playing, and we're relegated to this tiny little side stage playing for a few hundred people between big sets.
Right.
So it's kind of like kind of fun to have that experience, to be like, oh yeah, so these are all, you know, that Cali Roots Fest is kind of one of the culminations of California reggae fans, and people fly actually from all over the country to hear, variations of reggae music. And then when you play a general festival, you realize that how many people don't even know that you exist outside of that scene. So that's kind of actually one of our festival goals for the last few years, is to play more non-genre specific festivals to kind of latch into a fan base who maybe has heard of like Sublime, but no one else.
Right. Can we open up here for a question?
Yeah, sure.
Go up. Yes, so I'm sorry.
I'll just stand here.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
My name's Matt from Columbus. What's the pay range? Is it like $150 a day, 800 a week, or is it like per contract per tour?
That's a great question. Matt, that's that right? Yeah, heck yeah. Thanks for asking that. Um it's always weird talking about specific monies. But so I'll give it a little context first. I've been in the Hyrie since 2014, and we have run the gamut as far as pay. So that first tour that I was telling you I did when I opened up for Stick Figure for 3 months across the country, when they were just getting started, the pay for the entire band was $125 a show. There were 10 of us in a 12-passenger van and trailer trying to eat, pay for gas, and sleep somewhere. So we would have to do, none of us got paid, obviously, because we were definitely in the negative. We would do group meals, um, and we would do, we would go in with two people, get one hotel room at like, say, like a Marriott, a decent hotel room with a couple of beds. Then those two people would go to the room, open the door, walk to the back door, let the rest of the band in, and we'd sneak up, and there'd be 12 of us in the hotel room, most of us on sleeping bags on the floor, and we'd rotate who gets the bed. Um, it was it was pretty grueling. And I think that at that point, most people get turned off because they expect some sort of financial compensation. But just like with any business, your goal can either be immediate profit, in which case it's much easier to learn a bunch of Journey songs and do a tribute act once a month in your hometown. You'll get paid a lot more. Um, but the other thing is in business I call it market share, but in music that's a bad word, so we say building a fan base. But it's the same thing, right? So our goal was not money, but our goal was market share. And so for the first 3 years in Hyrie, because of our growth trajectory and basically trying to reach the most amount of people possible, no one really got paid. I think it was like 2016. I got really excited because we started getting a per diem. So my pay was like $5 a day, $10 a day, and we go out for multiple months.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really rough. And the band would continue to lose money on these tours. But right around then, because these promoters had started seeing us, people really liked the show. We were gathering new fans. We started getting more festival gigs. And so a festival gig for a tour can basically pay you the same amount as the entire rest of the tour. So we started as a band, the business of the band started breaking even on tours because there'd be one or two select festival gigs in the routing for that. And that would help make sure that when the van broke down and we weren't kind of just stranded wherever, middle of Georgia or whatever. At a certain point, you can start to cash in on that market share, and your offers start getting better and better and better. I think Hyrie's first year breaking $100,000, the band spent $120,000. So it's a matter of what kind of growth trajectory you want as a band and as an artist. Like, do you want to get a little bit of success and then cash that in right away and just kind of coast on that, or do you want to grow as large as possible? And I feel like this is a general business thing too. There's a lot of tech companies that do the same thing. They get huge crazy amounts of venture capital, but they're still not profitable. I think it took Uber like several years before they actually turned a profit. As far as the individual band members, we started with per diem, then we started getting a measly show payout. Then we started getting a larger show payout, and then right now we're on a tier system. So we get per show, we get a standard base amount and a per diem every day, whether we're playing a show or not. On top of that, if the show pays above X amount of dollars, then we get a percentage base raise for that show, depending on the different tiers that we hit as far as pay goes. But yeah, so like I can give the number of like a show payout. Like I recently played a festival and the show payout was like, for the band got contracted, it was like $30,000. But that festival was basically paying for the rest of the tour. Yeah. So me personally, like I have a base rate of $250. So if we're doing multiple shows in a row, normally we play 5 days on, 2 days off on like a tour. So I'll make 250 plus per diem, plus a merch cut, plus buyouts. So it kind of ranges. And then if we're playing like a festival, I'll make significantly more than that, or a one-off. But the band is still spending a lot of money as well. So like we're in a bus now, so most buses are rented, by the way.
And you gotta pay the driver, right?
Yeah, so and the bus normally contracts with the driver. There's bus companies around that specialize in van or band travel, right? The bus normally runs somewhere around like, I don't know, $8,500 a week and up. And that doesn't include gas, which is somewhere around $500 a day or more, depending, obviously. And that the driver is included, but his hotel rooms are not included, and he has to stay in a 4-star hotel or greater every night. So we have to pay the hotel expense for him as well. We normally sleep on the bus, but we get 1 day room. So we're normally 2 hotel rooms deep at a nice hotel. So like $500, another $500 in gas, another 12 to $1,500 for the actual bus rental per day per show. So the expense, I think, of our last tour, just the bus alone, was somewhere just shy of $100,000. We rented a lighting package, which the package itself, not including our light person to run it, was somewhere around $20,000. So the numbers sound big, like, oh, I played a festival and we made $30,000, but
It's your actual net.
yeah, all has to do with the actual net of it. So as individuals, we're getting paid, decent for a touring band, but as a whole, the band is still on that growth trajectory. So the numbers are better, but the show keeps getting better with the lighting packages and the comforts to get the band there safe every night without us all having to take turns driving the van and showing up an hour before sound check to try to scramble to on no sleep to get the show played. We
Right.
can we can wake up and be rested. So that's a really a great question. No one talks about the numbers enough. Um, which kind of leads me into um this other idea of finding ways to monetize both your band and yourself while on tour. But if it looks like you want to ask another question, so let's go ahead and maybe cap it cap it there.
Just a quick follow-up. How important is merchandise?
Oh, perfect. That's exactly what I was gonna
Yeah.
talk
My
about.
question was going to be, I know you teach like virtual lessons, like other things that you're able to do to kind of diversify and how important that is.
Yeah, so within the framework of the band, the show pay is only kind of one element, right? Merch is crucially important. If you get the right merch person and the right merch setup, um, we make as much, if not more, on an average show from merch than we do from the actual show. The merch is crucially important to a band. Larger bands like we were playing Red Rocks recently with a few bands, and the headliner, our merch person, was saying that they made something like 50, $60,000 in merch for that one show. I could be getting that number could actually be higher. I can't remember exactly what she said. Yeah, and that's just the headlining band, just in merch for just one night. Merch can be a lifesaver, especially when you're touring around making no money. All of our money kind of came from merch. Uh-oh, somebody disappeared, I think. But I'm gonna keep talking. um, hello? Weird. But yeah, merch is infinitely important, and finding other ways to monetize yourself on the road is super important. What what Tover was saying, with teaching lessons on the road and stuff. I in the early days when we were making no money, I would advertise for in-person backstage guitar lessons. And so I'd put it out on social media and be like, "Oh, we're going to these cities if you're interested in taking a guitar lesson." And that was kind of the thing that kept me making money throughout these tours when I'm just bleeding money left and right on expenses with no income. Are you still on, Jason?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I couldn't find my mouse for a second.
Oh, no worries. I wonder
Yeah.
what happened to their feed. Fixing stuff. Do you? Oh,
Oh
they're
no,
back. Howdy.
Sorry about that.
Did you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you at all.
You're talking about lessons on the road, and then you're doing virtual lessons too. Is that the thing?
Yeah. So I've always loved teaching music almost as much as I've loved playing it. I started teaching way too young. Being from a super small town, when I was 14, I got a job in a guitar shop.
Oh, wow.
And somewhere around 14, 15, the owner of said guitar shop was really hungover one day. And he called me and he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm supposed to teach this guitar lesson, but I'm not coming in. So can you teach it?" And mind you, I was way too I was way not far enough on my journey, my own personal music journey, to be qualified to teach anybody anything. But I have this philosophy in life that I've had since I was a teen, of just say yes and then figure it out on the way. So I said, of course, I'll teach a guitar lesson. Luckily, the guy was super forgiving and a super novice, so I was able to give him some sort of value. But it really opened my eyes to how much I learned when I taught that lesson, and it's kind of continued to this day. I've been teaching lessons ever since, because I realized that with every different perspective and every different question, I really have to know something to tell them something. So someone would have an issue and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's an issue. Let me
That's a
let me
thing.
really dive into this." Or somebody would want to learn to play something that had a new technique or a new way of playing that I hadn't encountered yet, and so I would really dive into the material to figure it out. Through years of teaching, I feel that might be the most impactful thing on making me a better player. My need to figure this stuff out, to be able to help other people figure it out. Figuring out how to explain it to someone else has really helped my musical communication, studio work and live show arrangement and things like that. So when I started touring, I started offering these lessons on the road, teaching on Skype before I knew about Zoom. And it was kind of a way for me to teach my existing students as I was moving around, those who wanted to stick with me, which is kind of one of my other main life philosophies, is give people the opportunity to support you or to work with you. If they want to and they don't have the opportunity, well, that's money and that you're leaving on the table, basically. But yeah, and then the drummer from Stick Figure, his name's Kevin. He's a incredibly talented guy. He was doing the same thing that I was, but he kind of turned it into an entire company called Backstage Music Lessons, and so I started partnering with him to help facilitate that area of teaching. And then I do some just general social media advertising using the existing fan base, because you say that you go back to that 500 people, say 50 of them become Hyrie fans, say 10 of those are musicians, and say 2 of them might be interested in the guitar lesson because they saw your performance and they really liked it. But if you give people those opportunities and you take advantage of people wanting to interact and learn, you can easily take whatever you're making per show and double it, if not triple it, from those opportunities. So yeah, teaching has been an amazing thing for me. Finding ways to sustain yourself while you're building that market is super important. My bass player still, when we're not touring, he just drives a tow truck, and he works for a company that lets him take off all that he wants for tours, and then when he gets back, they just put him in a truck, and he loves it. He loves the fact that he can play music, only has to play what he wants to play when he wants to play it within the confines of the band, and then when he's not doing that,
He clocks in.
Yeah, he just rather do something else, drive around, get paid, do the regular whatever. And that's cool. That's the other thing that is really cool about being a musician. People have this idea of either you're a full-time musician or you're not, right? But I really feel like it's a matter of balance, right? What do you want to do? What does your life entail, and how can playing music fit into that? For some people, it's, not touring at all
Right.
is preferable for most most musicians. Some people are really good of scoring or creating stock music for commercials and video games, or some people are really good at making the most of local weekend shows, playing in cover bands or tribute bands. I arguably made the same, if not more, per show playing in a cover slash tribute slash wedding band, but it's not where my heart was at. With assessing your goals, like, what do you want? I mean, touring sounds like the thing, right? But in reality, it's just one aspect. I feel like there's this false equation that if you're out there as a touring musician, you're the best musician. There's so many people that only play for fun who could play circles around me. I just love creating my unique brand of art and sharing that with people. And I've found a way to do it successfully for my own life and lifestyle.
So, talking about working on the road and doing diversifying. Now, what about mental health and like taking days off? Is that a thing? How do you
That
go?
is a thing.